with a distressing rapidity. The hill and valley experience of the mystic is but one way of expressing this ebb and flow. Sometimes the disciple is walking in the sunlight and at other times in the dark. Sometimes he knows the joy of full communion and again all seems dull and sterile. His service is on occasion a fruitful and satisfying experience and he seems to be able to really aid. At other times he feels that he has not to offer and his service is arid and apparently without results. All is clear to him some days and he seems to stand on the mountain top looking out over a sunlit landscape, where all is clear to his vision. He knows and feels himself to be a son of God. Later, however, the clouds seem to descend and he is sure of nothing, and seems to know nothing. He walks in the sunlight and is almost overpowered by the brilliance and heat of the solar rays, and wonders how long this uneven experience and the violent alternation of these opposites is to go on. Once however that he grasps the fact he is watching the effect of the cyclic impulses, and the effect of the soul's meditation upon his form nature, the meaning becomes clearer and he realizes that it is that form aspect which is failing in its response, and reacting to energy with unevenness. He then learns that once he can live in the soul consciousness and attain that high altitude, if I might so express it, at will, the fluctuations of the form life will not touch him. He then perceives the narrow-edged razor path which leads from the plane of physical life to the soul realm, and finds that when he can tread it with steadiness it leads him out of the ever-changing world of the senses into the clear light of day and into the world of reality. The form side of life then becomes to him simply a field for service, and not a field of sensuous perception. Let the student ponder upon this last sentence. Let him aim to live as a soul. Then the cyclic impulses, emanating from the soul, are known to be impulses for which he himself is responsible, and which he has sent forth. He then knows himself to be the initiating cause, and is not subject to the effects. Looked at from another angle we get two factors, the breath and the form which the breath energizes 33 and drives into activity. Upon careful study, it becomes apparent that we have, for eons of time, identified ourselves with the form. We have emphasized the effects of the imparted activity, but have not understood the nature of the breath, nor known the nature of the one who breathes. Now in our work we are concerning ourselves with that one who, breathing rhythmically, will drive the form into right action and right control. This is our objective and our goal. A right understanding is necessary nevertheless, if we are to appreciate intelligently our task and its effects. Much more could be said on this rule, but enough has been here given for the average applicant to discipleship to consider, and upon which to base action. Most of us are average, are we not? If we regard ourselves otherwise, we divorce ourselves from others and become guilty of the sin of separateness, the one real sin. An appreciation of the above thoughts should build in the aspirant a realization of the value of his meditation work, whilst the ideal of a cyclic response to soul impulse lies back of the activities of a morning meditation, a noonday recollection, and an evening review. A larger ebb and flow is also indicated in the two aspects of the full moon and the new moon. Let this be borne in mind. May there be a full and steady play of cyclic force from the kingdom of spirit upon each one of us, calling us forth into the realm of light, love and service, and producing a cyclic response from each one. May there be a constant interchange between those who teach and the disciple who seeks instruction. Much preliminary work will have to be done. The disciple on the physical plane and the inner teacher, whether one of the great ones or the master within the heart, need to know each other somewhat, and to accustom themselves to each other's vibration. Teachers on the inner planes have much to contend with owing to the slowness of the mental processes of students in physical bodies. But confidence and trust will set up the right vibration, which will produce eventually accurate work. Lack of faith, of calmness, of application, and the presence of emotional unrest will hinder. Long patience those on the inner side need in dealing with all who must, for lack of other and better material, be utilized. Some physical injudiciousness may make the physical body non-receptive. Some worry or care may cause the astral body to vibrate to a rhythm impossible for the right reception of the inner purpose. Some prejudice, some criticism, some pride, may be present that will make the mental vehicle of no use. Aspirants to this difficult work must watch themselves with infinite care, and keep the inner serenity and peace and a mental pliability that will tend to make them of some use in the guarding and guiding of humanity. The following rules might therefore be given. 1. It is essential that there should be an endeavor to arrive at absolute purity of motive. 2. The ability to enter the silence of the high places will follow next. The stilling of the mind depends upon the law of rhythm. If you are vibrating in many directions and registering thoughts from all sides, this law will be unable to touch you. Balance and poise must be restored before equilibrium can be reached. The law of vibration and the study of atomic substance are closely intertwined. When more is known about these atoms and their action, reaction and interaction, then people will control their bodies scientifically, synchronizing the laws of vibration and of rhythm. They are the same and yet unlike. They are phases of the law of gravitation. The earth is itself an entity which, by the force of will, holds all things to itself. This is an obscure matter, little has been learned about it as yet. The in-breathing and out-breathing of the entity of the earth affects vibration potently, that is the vibration 34 of the physical plane matter. There is a connection also between this and the moon. Those members of humanity who are specially under lunar influence respond to this attraction more than any others, and they are difficult to use as transmitters. The silence that comes from the inner calm is the one to cultivate. Aspirants are urged to remember that the time will come when they too will form part of the group of teachers on the inner side of the veil. If then they have not learned the silence that comes from strength and from knowledge, how will they bear the apparent lack of communication that they will then find exists between them and those on the outer side? Learn therefore how to keep quiet, or usefulness will be hampered by astral fretfulness when on the other side of death. 3. Remember always that lack of calm in the daily life prevents the teachers on egoic levels from reaching you. Endeavor therefore to remain quiescent as life unrolls, work, toil, strive, aspire, and hold the inner calm. Withdraw steadily into interior work, and so cultivate a responsiveness with the higher planes. A perfect steadiness of inner poise is what the masters need in those whom they seek to use. It is an inner poise that holds to the vision yet does its outer work on the physical plane with the concentrated physical brain attention, which is in no way deviated by the inner receptiveness. It involves a dual activity. 4. Learn to control thought. It is necessary to guard what you think. These are days when the race as a whole is becoming sensitive and telepathic and responsive to thought interplay. The time is approaching when thought will become public property, and others will sense what you think. Thought has, therefore, to be carefully guarded. Those who are contacting the higher truths, and becoming sensitive to the universal mind must protect some of their knowledge from the intrusion of other minds. Aspirants must learn to inhibit certain thoughts, and prevent certain knowledge from leaking out into the public consciousness when in contact with their fellow men. It is of course of vital interest to appreciate the significance of the words, "scatters not his force." There are so many lines of activity into which the soul-inspired disciple may throw himself. Assurance as to varying lines of activity is not easy to reach, and every aspirant knows perplexity. Let us put the problem in the form of a question, relegating it to the plane of everyday endeavor, as we are not yet in a position to comprehend in what way a soul can scatter its forces on the higher planes. What is the criterion whereby a man may know which out of several lines of activity is the right line to take? Is there, in other words, a revealing something which will enable a man unerringly to choose the right action and go the right way? The question has no reference to a choice existing between the path of spiritual endeavor and the way of the man of the world. It refers to right action when faced with the choice. There is no question but that a man is faced, in his progress, with increasingly subtle distinctions. The crude discrimination between right and wrong, which occupies the child soul, is succeeded by the finer distinctions of right, or of more right, of high, or higher, and the moral or spiritual values have to be faced with the most meticulous spiritual perception. In the stress and toil of life and in the constant pressure on each one from those who constitute their group, the complexity of the problem is very great. In solving such problems, certain broad discriminations can precede the more subtle, and when these decisions have been made, the more subtle can then take their place. The choice between selfish and unselfish action is the most obvious one to follow upon the choice between right and wrong, and is easily settled by the honest soul. A choice which involves discrimination between individual benefit 35 and group responsibility rapidly eliminates other factors, and is easy to the man who shoulders his just responsibility. Note the use of the words, just responsibility. We are considering the normal, sane man and not the overconscientious morbid fanatic. There follows next the distinction between the expedient, involving factors of physical plane relations of business and of finance, leading up to a consideration of the highest good for all parties concerned. But having through this triple eliminative process arrived at a certain position, cases arise, where choice still remains, in which neither common sense nor logical, discerning reason seem to help. The desire is only to do the right thing. The intent is to act in the highest possible way, and to take that line of action which will produce the best good of the group apart from personal considerations altogether. Yet light upon the path, which must be trodden, is not seen. The door which should be entered is unrecognized, and the man remains in the state of constant indecision. What, then, must be done? One of two things. First, the aspirant can follow his inclination and choose that line of action out of the residue of possible lines which seems to him the wisest and the best. This involves belief in the working of the law of karma, and also a demonstration of that firm decisiveness, which is the best way in which his personality can learn to abide by the decisions of his own soul. It involves also the ability to go forward upon the grounds of the decision made, and so to abide by the results without forebodings or regrets. Secondly, he can wait, resting back upon an inner sense of direction, knowing that in due time he will ascertain, through the closing of all doors but one, which is the way he should go. For there is only one open door through which such a man can go. Intuition is needed for its recognition. In the first case mistakes may be made,